We're doing Ozfest in the UK. Yeah, did I say UK? I meant US. But I mean, yeah, we're doing that all summer, so it should be really, really good.
Jamie Oliver, who bears no relation to the annoying celebrity male cook of the same name, was born in Kilfinid, a few miles from Pontypridd. In his early teens, he was often to be seen wandering the streets with a pocket camera, taking pictures and then painting them up on canvas later. In this way, he earned a place on a fine arts degree course at Bristol University. Just as he was considering a postgraduate course at Cardiff, a call came from some old friends. Jamie had known the members of Lostprophets from his teenage years in Pontypridd and almost ended up being their vocalist. He had played bass guitar in a few local bands, but had decided to concentrate on art rather than music. But, as so often is the case in life, just when you think you've got it all figured out, fate intervenes. In this case, it came in the guise of a phone call from Ian Watkins. For the original sessions for the fake Sound of Progress, the band had been booked into a recording studio in Birmingham. That was fine, but there was a problem. None of them had any transport. Enter Jamie Oliver, a man with a car. So the trip was on, and a few weeks later all involved had had such a good time that Jamie was invited to act as band photographer. Visible Noise objected to this arrangement on the grounds that they couldn't afford to pay anybody who was not a proper band member. In response to this, Jamie was packed off to get a pair of turntables and an electronic keyboard, and a week later he was a fully fledged member of the Lostprophets. On January the 26th, 2002, Lostprophets arrived in Dublin to play at the inaugural night of the NME Carling Awards tour. According to accounts written at the time, a splendid time was had by all. Opening that night were the then relatively unknown The Coral. Other performers included the Black Rebel Motorcycle Club and Andrew WK, who Mike Lewis immortalised in an interview with Music.com as an utter wanker. In a subsequent interview, he seemed to contradict himself by claiming that Andrew WK was a really nice person. Maybe burgeoning success had confused him. Or maybe the band's press officer had to remind him that speaking your mind when being interviewed was not always the best policy. A few weeks later, the Lostprophets proceeded the final night of the tour in London with a short set in the Virgin Megastore on Oxford Street, where they signed copies of the remixed Fake Sound of Progress album. Autumn 2001 and spring 2002 saw a frenzy of activity as the band's various recordings were remixed and released in a variety of formats. In November 2001, Shinobi vs. Dragon Ninja had been released as both a 3-track CD single and as a 7-inch single with Miles From Nowhere on the B-side. A second CD, also containing Miles From Nowhere, followed this almost immediately. In January 2002 came the limited edition vinyl release of the album, and in March 2002, the Fake Sound of Progress CD singles were released in their various configurations, with the demo of Happy New Year, Have a Good 1985 reappearing, along with the demo for Shoulder to the Wheel. The other track featured in all this was, of course, a cover of the Duran Duran James Bond single A View to a Kill, which was then the latest Bond movie, starring a worn-out-looking Roger Moore, who would soon be replaced briefly by Timothy Dalton. This cover version was the obligatory nod to the past and revealed the band's pop roots. No matter how hard you think you are, there's always a pop skeleton in the collective cupboard. This would bring further allegations of selling out and claims that nu metal was just another fashion-led branch of pop music. Drinking and smoking were by now considered so antisocial and old school that it began to look as if the scene's detractors might have a point. Wasn't the original idea of rock music supposed to be that getting old in safety and comfort was for wusses, and that the real contenders either went balmy or ended up dead? Well, whatever, that wasn't the case now. It seems the only rock casualties of the modern era were those who had to be admitted to accident and emergency, having cut their finger opening a tin of organic peach slices in fruit juice. In March, the band had duly picked up their NME Carling Award for Best Metal Act and did a run of Virgin Megastore appearances for more meet-and-greet opportunities with the fans. A week later, it was announced they would play the Irish leg of the 2002 Ozfest tour, playing support to Ozzy Osbourne, Therapy, Slayer and System of a Down. Not bad for 6 guys from Pontypridd, whose critics had always maintained that nu metal was for Americans and that they hadn't a chance of taking them on at their own game. Time would tell, and in the meantime, there was work to do.